Hello and welcome to Aurelian University. In this tutorial we're going to talk about the following things. We're going to talk about another method for adding numbers into strings, getting user input, expressions, and how to execute code conditionally. And this is really the bulk of what I want to talk about. How to execute code conditionally, and if statements, else statements, elif statements. That's all part of executing code conditionally. And then actually I don't think we're going to cover inline if statements today, just because I don't think that's something we want to put in this lesson. So the first thing I want to talk about here really quickly is we've got this code right here, and we want to get some user input so we can make our programs a little bit more complex, a little bit more interactive by getting user input. And we can do that with this function that's called input. So if you set a variable as equal to input, and then you have some sort of message here, what is going to happen is when you run the function, it's going to give you this message. It's going to say enter number, and then you can enter a number in here and press enter, and that will be stored in this variable here, number 1. And I'm just going to put the integer function around that, and what that's going to do is it's going to do what we call casting it, so it'll cast it as an integer. So it will mean this will be an integer data type. Whatever we put in here, they'll try to turn it into a number, essentially, which is good because we call the variable number 1. And we'll do the exact same thing for number 2. The message will be enter another number. And what we want to do is we want to have different behavior depending on the two numbers entered. So if number 1 is less than number 2, then we're going to print out a message. If it's number 2 is less than number 1, we'll print out a message. And if neither of those are true, we'll print out a third different message. And the way we do this is with conditionals. So this first thing here is an if. If statements are conditionals, or start conditionals, and so what we do is put if, and then we put an expression. An expression is something that Python will run and compute something out of. So here it'll tell us either true or false. It'll tell us if this number 1 less than number 2 is true, and if it is true, it'll execute this code. And then after that we have an elif statement. An elif statement is a statement that only executes if the if statement before it is not true, and if the if statement in it is true. If we were to erase this L and just make another if statement, then it would run this regardless of whether or not this was true, only if this expression here is true. But we don't want to do that. We want to have only one of these behaviors possible. And then an else statement runs only if none of the code in the if, or if there is an elif statement in the elif statement, it will run only if neither of those are true. And so we're going to print out this message. So I'm going to run the program, and then I'm going to talk about how we've concatenated these strings here, because it's a little bit different than how we did it before. So Python 3, and I've already changed my directory to the correct directory, so you don't have to worry about that. Lesson4.py. So it's prompting me to enter a number. I'm going to enter 16. Enter another number. I'm going to enter 8. And it tells me 16 is greater than 8. So it's a good maybe not good, an appropriate message that it gives us. And the way we've done this, we've constructed this method here, or this message here, is we have this string, and in the string we put a percentage sign and a D, and that stands for some sort of digit or number input. And here we put another percentage sign and a D. And then after the string, we put a percentage sign and then in parentheses, we put it just sort of a list of all of the numbers we want inserted. Technically, it's not a list, but until we discuss exactly what lists are in Python, we'll call it a list. So it inserts these numbers into here. We can also actually do this for strings, but this is a nice handy way to handle type conversions. So that's how we get our different behaviors here. So if we do the opposite, we enter 8 first, then 16. You see we get a different message. 8 is less than 16. And if we do this here, we say 16, 16, we get a different message, which is 16 is equal to 16. So now with user input and if, elif, and else statements, we're going to be able to write programs that actually are a lot more complex and have a lot more things that we can do in them. And so in the future, hopefully these programs become a little bit more useful than what they have been in the past.